Hello, my beautiful people who are on this anxious attachment codependent journey with me. Today, we are going to be talking all about becoming the master of your mind. Okay, anxiety is all in the mind. Anxiety is about living your life in the future or the past. Okay, so becoming a master of your mind is going to be all about learning how to exist in the present moment where anxiety can exist, depression can exist. So that's what this video is going to be all about, and I'm very excited to teach you guys about it. The mind, I would probably say the mind is the number one thing I know the most about in this life. I have studied so much psychology, so much spirituality, so much stuff resulting in understanding the capacity that the mind has and the capacity that the mind doesn't have. So I want to share these beautiful insights with you guys today, and in hopes that we can start to reclaim the power and the control over our mind and make our mind our servant to us, not being a servant to our mind. Okay, so first off, I want to just explain to you guys a bit about how the mind and the consciousness works. So the mind is really comprised up of two entities. Okay, you're going to have your thinker. We'll say the thinker is going to be at the front. Okay, this is where we think about things, we problem solve, we experience a lot of our automatic thinking in our forefront of our brain. Okay, and then we have this mechanism which I call the watcher, okay, which is, we'll say it sits back here. And this is just this is the consciousness that sits back in the lazy boy chair and just reclines, and it has the ability to watch everything go down. So, and it's not impacted by emotions. It really is the consciousness. It is the presence in our being that is undisturbed. Okay, so this is essentially when you think about gurus and people finding enlightenment, this is the seat of consciousness they sit in when they experience enlightenment. So you need to understand that a lot of times people in the spiritual community, they misconstrue this idea of no mind. Okay, there's no such thing as no mind. The human being needs the mind. The mind is a part of us. We need it to problem solve. We need it to store knowledge. Our mind is actually our friend. But what we've done is we've created pain and misery in the mind, and we've attributed the mind to being something negative. Okay, so the mind, that's the first point I want to make, is the mind is beautiful. The mind is beautiful, but it needs to be mastered in order for it to really be in a state of beauty consistently, because we're going to have periods where we go up down, and we're going to feel these experiences. So the idea, instead of no mind, the idea is actually to become the master of your mind, because the mind is no different than the body. The mind and body are actually one. Okay, they're one entity. So it's really just mind, body, and soul. Those are the two components, the two compartments that we speak of. We tend to speak of mind and body as separate, but they're actually not. We've created a separate distinction from them because of the ego. The ego is the mechanism that teaches us that the mind is separate from the body. So what we need to do is we need to understand how the mind works as in correlation with the body. It's no different. So when I'm sitting here and I tell my arm to move, right? My arm is my slave. My arm does what my consciousness is telling it to do, right? So I'm saying move up and down, and the mind is no different. The mind, I right now in this moment, I can tell my mind to stop thinking, and it can go over there and it can stop thinking. But what ends up happening, because my mind isn't trained the way I'd like it to be, is it starts to hop back on, and it's like, nope, and it gets all crazy, and it starts to talk all this crazy chatter. So that just goes to show you the consciousness that's back here is able to dictate to the frontal thinking to chill out and stop thinking and go down into body, right? That means that we have the capacity as a human being to take our consciousness and tell our mind what to do. So this process of no mind is actually just making your mind your servant. Right now, you are the servant to your mind because your mind is telling you what to do. And this is just simply the product or the symptom of an untrained mind. I call it actually untamed mind because the mind is like a wild animal, right? And we need to domesticate that wild animal with our consciousness, right? We need our consciousness to tell our minds to go over there and hang out. And when I'm ready to access you again, when I'm ready to need you again, I will bring you on board and we will start to problem solve or acquire knowledge or read a book or whatever it might be. Okay? So that's a big part of this process of understanding the mind, is that we do not reject the mind. We simply place it over here when we're not using it, and we bring it back in when we use it. This is the theoretical ideal model that we want to move towards when it comes to mastering the mind. Okay? This is a lifelong journey. This is a lifelong process. So please do not get me wrong. I've been working at this stuff for years, and I literally in the mornings, I still can only make it to 13 minutes. And in those 13 minutes of meditation, my mind starts to go all wild, and I have to bring it back to the present moment at least 10 times. Okay, so we're talking like this is some serious work because our minds we haven't been training them. We've been letting them train us and run our show, and this is when it can become so painful. Okay, so understanding and relating this to the anxious attachment style or the anxious mind is that it's fueled by anxiety. It's fueled by fear. Okay, so either way, when we're in a state of mind and not in a state of observer consciousness, we are still in a form of misery. The reason why is because you can have positive misery and you can have negative misery. Negative misery is when we experience the pain and suffering of life, okay, through egoic mind states that are telling us that we cannot have pain and suffering without having love, or we cannot have love without having pain or suffering. It's about contrast. The ego is always about contrasting and finding ways that things can't be congruent. So we're in our own way. We're sabotaging our own happiness. Okay, that's over here. Over here is I call it positive misery, or in yogic structures we call it positive misery, because when we're over here in this realm and we're thinking positive things and things are going great in our life, we're in positive. But the reason why it's still positive misery is because at any moment it can be taken from you. Because in positive misery, we're attaching so much desire, we're attaching so much hope, we're attaching so much expectation on things maintaining this way, that when things start to go into negative misery, it can easily be disrupted. When we're in our watcher consciousness, we can't be disrupted, right? We're flowing with the present moment as it's moving, right? And what happens with the mind in these misery states is consciousness is flowing and we stop and we get caught up in mind and caught up in thought. Consciousness doesn't stop flowing, it keeps going. And then you're stuck here in this thought and you're perseverating or you're ruminating about something that just happened that pissed you off or whatever, and we're getting caught and we're getting stuck. So what that feels like for people is it's a lack of flow. Consciousness is trying to flow and we're getting stuck. So we're actually creating dams in our river of consciousness that are flowing by our mind. Our mind is creating dams. So our mind is almost like this little crazy beaver that's going around and creating dams in our river and preventing it from flowing properly. Okay? So this is important to understand, because as an anxious person that struggles with anxiety, it all originates in my mind. Okay, so what I've been trying my hardest to do in my experiences through working through some of this codependent stuff and working through some of this anxious attachment stuff is allowing myself to take that journey from your head down into your body. Because when you're in your body, you're actually experiencing a form of no mind, but it's actually more so you've just asked your mind to sit over here and wait while you have this experience down in your body. Okay, so the body doesn't have any sort of ego mechanism attached to it. It doesn't have contrast between happy and sad or fear and love. Your body is just resonating always and vibrating always in this truth of who you are. right? It's where our intuition lies. It's where our heart chakra lies, which is where we connect with other beings in our authenticity. Okay, our mind is where we connect with people in our ego, or in our intellect, which 9 times out of 10 is a misrepresentation of who we are because it's construct of who we are. It's the idea, the persona, the facade of that we have created about who we are, right? It's the separation mechanism. My mind tells me that I am different than you because of my beliefs. My heart tells me that I am one with you because we come from the same energy. We come from the human experience, right? So this is an important concept to understand in this if we do want to move away from anxiety and more into security in our thinking, is we need to learn how to have separation between the mind and our consciousness, our actual consciousness that is flowing, right? So there's a lot of great things you can do. Meditation is one of them. There's something that's really cool that you can start to practice, which is called one-pointed concentration. And this is essentially where you find an object either within yourself or outside yourself, and you focus on that. And every time your mind wanders, you bring it back to that one thing that you're concentrating on. So for me, counting. Sometimes I'll do counting meditation. Sometimes I'll put on music and I'll focus on the music. Sometimes I'll focus on my breath. Breath tends to be the most common one, but I like to mix it up because I find that it just makes it more fun, more engaging. And the key to this process is to not search. You're not searching for stillness. You're letting stillness find you, right? Because when we search for something, we bring resistance into it, and when there's resistance to something, that thing persists. And in this case, it's the insanity of the mind. The mind is searching and seeking for this moment of stillness. You'll never find it. So sit back in the seat of consciousness and allow this beautiful energy to find you. And that's the key. That's one of the keys. The other key is to be gentle. In the process of meditation and experiencing separation from mind, and is to be able to be gentle with yourself. Okay, the more gentle you can be with yourself in this process, the better, because it is extremely uncomfortable to sit with wanting and desiring one thing and having the mind interrupt that constantly. It can cause so much irritation and so much anger and frustration, and you're going to have days that are going to feel great, and you're going to have days that are going to feel terrible. And just the key is be gentle, don't bring judgment into the experience, and don't bring expectation into the experience. Allow what comes that day and in that moment to come. The more we push, the less we get, right? We're pushing things away, then obviously we're not being open to the flow of our consciousness because we're pushing, we're resisting, and we're creating dams in our river. Okay? So this has been very helpful for me because, my gosh, like, in the anxious attachment style, it's so crazy where the mind can go and the journey that the mind can take you on. And the more distance that you can create between you and your mind, and the more mastery that you can create within you and your mind, treating again just like your mind, like your arm, right? You can stop it. I can tell my arm, okay, sit, don't move. It doesn't move. We want to get to that place with our mind. So the more we can get to that place, the less we're going to indulge ourselves on these stories of fear, and these stories of abandonment, and these stories of our partner not meeting our needs, right? So mastery of mind is the next step in breaking through these shackles of codependency and anxious attachment style, because all of this stuff we're experiencing originates here. It doesn't originate here. Here is telling you to guide your way with love, to allow your partner to have space, to allow yourself to have space, to step into this beautiful energy to which you are, right? You stop fixating on other when you go into yourself and you start to build this beautiful energy. Well, if we're always operating from here, it's impossible. So take the journey from your head down into your heart and start to experience whatever it is that your body is wanting to experience, and follow sensation. Try and follow the heartbeat. Try and follow the blood as it flows through your body, right? Start to connect with some of these sensations, and just know that this is a lifelong process. This isn't a destination by any means. You'll never ever get to the destination. It's all about the journey. So just enjoy the journey of becoming the master of your mind, and soak it up. Soak it up. All right, that's it for today, guys. Sending lots of love. Bye.